All right, let's talk about something, a genetic quirk that a huge chunk of the population has, but almost nobody's heard of. It's called the MTHFR mutation, and believe me, getting a handle on what this is could seriously be a game changer for your health. So just think about this for a second. What if one of the most common genetic mutations in the entire world was influencing your health right this very minute, and you had absolutely no idea? Yeah, you heard that right. We're talking somewhere between 30 and 60% of people. That's a massive number of us walking around with this genetic variation. It's kind of staggering, actually, and that's exactly why we need to break down what it is and what it means. Okay, so let's get right into it. What in the world is MTHFR? We're going to start with the basics, the gene itself, and the super important enzyme it creates. Okay, deep breath. It stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. It's a mouthful, which is why we're all just going to call it MTHFR. This enzyme has one really critical job. It takes the folate, that's vitamin B9 you get from food, and it converts it into its active form, the form your body can actually use, called methylfolate. The easiest way to think about it is this. The MTHFR gene is like the instruction manual, or the blueprint for making the MTHFR enzyme. So you can see where this is going. If there's a typo in that blueprint, the enzyme that gets built might not work quite right. And you know, it really matters how you inherit these genetic typos. If you get just one copy of the mutated gene from one parent, that's called heterozygous. But if you get a mutated copy from both of your parents, then you're homozygous. And, well, it makes sense, right? Having two faulty blueprints can definitely cause bigger problems than just having one. All right, so we've got the what. Now let's get to the why. Why is this so important? Well, this MTHFR enzyme is a star player in a process called methylation. And methylation, it's happening inside your body billions of times every single second. It's nonstop. I'm not exaggerating when I say methylation is absolutely fundamental to life. I mean, it's involved in practically everything, from building and repairing your DNA to getting rid of toxins. It even keeps a compound called homocysteine in check, and that's a really big deal for your heart health. Oh, but it doesn't stop there. Not even close. Methylation is also crucial for making those feel-good neurotransmitters, like serotonin and dopamine. It's key to producing your body's master antioxidant, glutathione. It even plays a role in fertility and making sure a baby develops properly. The reach of this one single process it's just incredible. Okay, so I think we can all agree, methylation is a huge deal. So what happens when that MTHFR gene has a mutation and this whole incredibly complex system gets thrown out of whack? Let's dig into what can go wrong. And this really gets to the core of it, right? Why is an MTHFR mutation a problem? Why should you even care if you have it? What are the real-world consequences? All right, let's break it down. When that MTHFR enzyme isn't working at 100%, it really creates two big issues. First, a substance called homocysteine can start to build up to unhealthy levels. And second, your body's entire methylation process just slows down. It doesn't work as well as it should. Let's focus on that first problem for a second, the high homocysteine. This isn't just some abstract number on a lab report. High levels of this stuff can cause real damage to the lining of your arteries, and that directly increases the risk for some really serious things like heart attacks, strokes, and blood clots. So because methylation touches pretty much everything, it's probably not surprising that a faulty MTHFR gene has been linked to a whole host of health conditions. We already talked about heart disease, but the list also includes things like depression and anxiety, and even neurological issues like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And the list keeps going. MTHFR mutations are a big concern during pregnancy, for example, because of the risk of neural tube defects in the baby. They're also connected to cognitive decline and might even be a trigger for some autoimmune disorders. It just goes to show how one tiny genetic variation can have these massive ripple effects throughout the body. Now, you'd think with all of these connections, this would be a settled issue, but it's not. So for our last section, let's get into the controversy because there is definitely a divided opinion on this in the medical world. And you might be wondering, wait a minute, if this is so common and tied to all these serious problems, why isn't my doctor talking about it? And that is a perfectly reasonable question. This quote really nails the debate. See, on one hand, you've got doctors and practitioners who say, look, I see the effects of this mutation in my patients every single day. But on the other hand, you have doctors who push back and say, hold on, if up to 60% of people have this and feel totally fine, maybe its importance is being a little exaggerated. And of course, this leads to another huge question. Especially if you find out you have this mutation, does it affect your life expectancy? Does having MTHFR mean you're going to live a shorter life? Well, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. The research says there's no direct evidence that the mutation itself shortens your life. However, and this is a really big however, the conditions that are linked to it, things like heart disease or severe depression, those can absolutely be life-threatening if they aren't managed. So let's wrap this up with the key things to remember. 1. MTHFR is the enzyme that turns the folate from your food into something your body can use. 2. A mutation or a typo in the MTHFR gene can mess up that whole process. And 3. That disruption is linked to a whole bunch of health problems affecting everything from your to your head. So I'll leave you with this final thought. When you realize that up to 60% of us have this one mutation, and it could be influencing so many different aspects of our health, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other common health issues out there might have a hidden genetic piece of the puzzle that we're just now beginning to understand?